Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. Well, for days now, the House has been bogged down, unable to deal with government business, thanks to a Conservative point of privilege.
You know, this is a Liberal government that has always been ethically challenged. It is scandal-plagued, and the Liberals have a culture of corruption.
Now, the standoff has its roots in a government green fund known as Sustainable Development Technology Canada. It was folded last June after the Auditor General found issues with how the fund was governed and how it handled public dollars, giving money estimated to be in the tens of millions of dollars to several projects that were not eligible under the program. Parliament, led by Conservatives, ordered the government to release all documents related to that fund to the RCMP, but that did not happen. Instead, what was made available were redacted copies, which leads us to the point of privilege, suspending all other business for days now until resolution is reached.
The House of Commons demanded these documents be sent to the RCMP so that the RCMP can determine whether or not there are criminal charges warranted because of this corruption. It's really up to the government to determine how long that will take, but it's clear that they're willing to go to extreme lengths to cover up their corruption.
This is the Conservatives trying to muck up Parliament. But I can tell you that Liberal members of Parliament, NDP members of Parliament, Bloc members of Parliament are here to work for Canadians. Conservative members of Parliament are here for their own political, personal objectives, and they don't care what they do to Canadians in the meantime.
Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Robert Fife, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Tonda MacCharles, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Joël-Denis Bellavance, Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse. Hello to the three of you.
Hi there.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, nice to see you. And, you know, I'm going to start with you right now, Bob. What do you make of this impasse?
Well, look, I believe that Parliament is supreme. They have an obligation, if they're asking for documents, and clearly there is a cover-up going on here because they're not surrendering these documents to Parliament. I only ask Canadians to look back at the Winnipeg scientists, the two Winnipeg infectious disease scientists, where the Liberal government was actually even taking Parliament to court, the Speaker to court, and they finally backed down on that. In the end, they allowed an ad hoc committee to look into this, and we discovered that, in fact, these infectious disease scientists had allowed Chinese military scientists to run roughshod over our infectious disease, the only infectious disease laboratory in Winnipeg, and that information and sensitive information had been shared with the Chinese military authorities, and we subsequently learned after that that these two scientists had fled to China, and that's where they are now. So yes, Parliament has a role in saying you cannot hide this information from Parliament. And I think they're doing the right thing. It may not look pretty, and this is, I mean, you know what politics is like. Everybody's throwing accusations across the floor of the House of Commons, but Parliament has a right to those documents. We have to know if there was money that was stolen or there was something that was nefariously done here. And when a government says they don't want to share that information with you, we should all, our smell test is something's wrong here.
Okay,
sorry, go ahead. The difference here, and I agree that Parliament does have a right to ask for the documents. We've seen this through other scandals in the past. But the difference here is that what the Conservative motion did was not just ask for Parliament to deal with the documents in its own fora, but it wants them immediately shipped off, unredacted, to the RCMP and directing the RCMP essentially to investigate. And so that's where I draw the line here. I think that it's very problematic to have the legislative branch or an executive branch directing the RCMP to evidence that has not been put to any kind of threshold of examination. The RCMP can't launch an investigation into any ordinary citizen unless they have either reasonable grounds to suspect or believe something's happened. And in this case, the AG did not forward a criminal case to the RCMP based on everything she saw. And more to the point, though, you know, if the RCMP is going to get a production order to get unredacted stuff in the course of an investigation, they have to be able to prove that there's something to go on. That's what the Charter protects, your and my right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. So in this case, the difference between what they're doing.
Money. This is our money.
None of that is in question. I do not disagree with that. My question would be, why don't the Conservatives want Parliament to do its own investigation into this and do with it what they want with those documents? He's right, Parliament is supreme, but we're not talking about Parliament here, we're talking about the cops.
Okay, we're going to touch on 2 points that you raised there, but Joël-Denis, first and foremost, what do you make of the impasse?
Well, it's going to be lasting for a while because the Conservative Party does not want to let it go. And we'll see how the other opposition parties behave in this. And so it is un bras de fer, as we say in French, between the government and the Conservative Party, and that, I think, is going to be the order of the day for the next few weeks. If none of the parties wants to put the water in their wine or whatever it is.
Yeah, that works.
That's right, but what's a bad thing? I don't even know.
It's a battle between the two. But if nobody wants to put one in their water, that stalemate could lead the Prime Minister to just say, enough, I'm going to call an election. So that's a possibility that could lead to that federal election.
He won't call an election. Are you kidding me?
Well, except the other oppositions might unite because, we heard Peter Julian say if this keeps up, what's the use of having Parliament? But, let me pick up on a couple of points that Tonda made there because it is more than just releasing all these documents to Parliament. It is referring it right away to the RCMP. And to that, and the Liberals point to this, the RCMP has said that they may not even be able to use those documents because it may violate charter rights the way they obtain it. So it may not even be used in an investigation. The Auditor General raising concerns that for this to happen, for these documents to be released and then forwarded right to the RCMP, may compromise the independence of her office. Are those not concerns to be listened to?
Look, I think that Ton has a point that Parliament should be referred to a parliamentary committee as well. But I don't have a problem with the House saying these documents should, I don't know, has the Auditor General seen all of these unredacted documents? I don't think they have they?
We don't know.
We don't know that. And I don't have a problem with that these documents are shipped to the RCMP, because if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. But what's the secrecy here? What's the problem? It's taxpayers' money. And why can't the government reveal this information? Well, I think we know why, because there's something there that smells. Okay. And we've seen this over and over again. It doesn't have to be Liberal governments. Governments in the past, when they try to hide information like that, it's usually because there really is something to hide.
And to Bob's point about secrecy of this government, we do have somebody at La Presse who does access to information requests on a regular basis, in fact, on a daily basis. And we've reached a point where we need to do battle with the government to get the documents we do want, from the Privy Council Office, from the Minister, from the Department of Finance, from every department. It has become a daily battle for us to get those documents. So I'm just saying that it is sort of the illustration of this has become a symptom of this government and how it behaves towards documents that it feels may not be in its interest to release it to the public.
Okay, except that, and again, this picks up a bit on what Tonda's saying, that Greg Fergus has offered a remedy on this, saying that it should go to committee. And to my understanding, the other opposition parties are in favor of it going to committee, but the Conservatives are not letting it go to committee. Is that a bit of political play that needs to be pointed out?
Yes, of course. A lot of politics is involved in this, for sure.
For one thing, the Procedure and House Affairs Committee is chaired by a Liberal, and they have a majority on that committee. So I can see why the Conservatives would question whether that's the proper committee. In the case of the Winnipeg lab scientists, they were dealt with a different committee. And so, in fact, they had to create an ad hoc committee to deal with it. Right. And that might be a way out of the impasse. But at this point, I'm not sure that we see them going that route yet. There's a bit of political theater going on here. If the Conservatives can gum up the works of Parliament for a little while, they get to claim, show that Parliament's dysfunctional. We need an election. It speaks to their narrative, right? But, if you were a smart government House leader, you'd be quickly trying to get an ad hoc committee, just like the Winnipeg Lab one was, to deal with this issue. The question seems to be around, the unredacted portions of it. So there is a way out.
Look what we've seen in terms of all the contracting around Arrive Canada and all those, where they try tried to hide this information, and finally it got out. We've realized just what an absolute mess it is.
Yeah.
These are civil servants, not politicians, who have been involved in stealing from Canadians. This is a very similar thing. I don't know who are involved in all this, but it has a smell of potentially liberals enjoying, ripping off people, potentially. We have an obligation here to get that information out as quickly as possible. Sunlight and sunshine, right? So there's a lot of politics going on here. The Tories are trying to, smear the Liberals, and it's a nasty situation. But the bottom line, it's our money. Something has gone wrong here. The government's trying to hide it. Let's get it out.
Okay. Well, the point of privilege is not resolved, so it continues into next week. We'll be watching that. Listen, before we're out of time, though, I do want to move on to a couple of other things. Top of the mind is C-319. The Bloc's motion to get its private members bill adopted by the government to extend OAS top-ups to people under the age of 70, to senior citizens rather, under the age of 75. It is a condition for the Bloc support of the Liberal government. The Trudeau cabinet has said no, they're not supporting this. The Bloc now says it's going to work to bring the government down. Do you think that is going to be the case, or are they really going to give till October 29th for the government to try to solve this? Because that's also what they're saying.
They've muddied their own deadline, haven't they?
Yeah, they have.
So there's that. But there are some talks going on between Karina Gould and Stephen McKinnon and Alain Terrien and Andrienne Larouche, the sponsor of the Bloc's effort to get more money for seniors aged 65 to 74. It's that window. They want that topped up the same way the Liberals did it for the 75 and over. So there are talks still going on, and this is a government pretty desperate to survive right now. Would they be able to reach some kind of compromise where any additional benefit is means tested? In other words, it went to the most deserving, most vulnerable seniors. No one should discount there's a way out of that. And there are talks going on, so it's not just a done deal.
What I get the sense from Monsieur Yves-François Blanchet, the Bloc Québécois leader, is that he will not compromise on what he wants.
Yeah.
This is what he wants. If he doesn't get it, talks will begin with other opposition parties to start bringing down the government. And those talks, from what I can gather, will start next week. And this is a critical moment for the Bloc Québécois. It will join officially the Conservative Party in the ranks of parties who want to bring down the government. So that's a critical element.
And they're saying the same thing privately that they're saying publicly, the Bloc Québécois. They're saying no compromise, but no one should rule out. That's everybody's starting position in anything, isn't it?
Yeah, although, in the Bloc's case, win or lose, they get to make a political argument in Quebec.
There's a second option, second demand of the Bloc Québécois that is hitting a wall in the Senate, which on supply management. Yeah. So that is, a lot of rocks.
Frankly, was always
would
be the more difficult of the two, right? So,
potentially.
So that's a lot of obstacles that can't be met by the government because the government says it doesn't control the Senate, and there's a lot of opposition to tying the hands of future negotiators on supply management if and when we conclude new deals, or even when we start renegotiating the free trade agreement with the United States and Mexico. There are talks that need to be done next year to renew the CUSMA in 2026, and this if this deal, the bill is adopted and can be negotiated with the U.S., apparently Canada would be in a very weak position towards the United States.
Are you surprised that the Trudeau government didn't support the extension?
No, look, it's ridiculous. I mean, $16 billion, we can't afford that. But I do think there would be a way out. What Tonda is saying is that a means-tested way of increasing old age security would make more sense. But I don't know whether the Liberals probably would not do that because they believe in the universal principle of universality.
But you can exempt earned income to a certain level. You can not do clawbacks as quickly as you might otherwise. There's other ways to sort of massage how you deal with those benefits.
All of us are seeing is when Parliament came back, we knew it was going to be a festive session, but I don't think we've realized just how nasty and bad it's become so quickly.
Yeah.
And you get a feeling, Michael, after a while when you've been around politics for a long time at Parliament that, this might not last long. There is a possibility that we could be into an election before Christmas, just because there is, look what the Tories are doing in the House, look what the Bloc are doing. The NDP are quiet, but they know that they're going to be tested here too.
There's a precarity, isn't there?
Right.
There's always a sense in a minority government that's lasted this long. There's often a sense of, things are very fluid and dynamic, but this feels particularly more precarious than it has felt in a long time.
And it's hard for our audience probably to understand because they don't work here like we do. But, you get this feeling that it's hard to describe, but you get the sense that we're moving closer to that.
But that said, I'm still not sure. Honestly, I don't know where you guys get your
Okay, this
crystal
goes
ball,
to Joël-Denis,
but
who's
I'm
convinced
just
we're going to
saying,
the polls in the fall.
The only unknown player will be the NDP, and the NDP are watching for two things. First of all, when pharmacare will be officially adopted in the Senate and get the royal sanction that it needs. That's one thing. Second thing is the provincial elections in British Columbia. Once this
End
is
of
done,
October.
it does October 19th.
Yes, but by the end of the October, all the provincial elections are done.
Exactly.
And then another week, the U.S. election's
It
done.
clears the deck as soon as the BC election is done. The NDP says that's all we want. We want an NDP government re-elected in BC. We're putting all our efforts there. After that, we'll decide whether we have an election this fall.
Okay.
So,
but you're still not convinced. I love
I am definitely not convinced. No, but I don't have his crystal ball. I don't. I think that there is a world in which this government gets to spring, but God help us all, it's going to be really painful. It's going to be really painful getting there.
It is.
Because the tone in Parliament, as we've seen this week and for the last 3 weeks since we came back since the summer,
it's going to get worse.
It's been pretty bad, and I don't think it's impressing anybody. So.
Well, Joël-Denis was talking about pouring wine into water, so we'll see. We'll see where we stand in a few weeks' time. Listen, out of time,
Okay,
but Bob,
thank you.
Tonda, Joël-Denis, always fun. Thank you for this.
thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too.